45,000 people in the UK have signed up to offer their homes to Ukrainian refugees fleeing the war.
Yeah, now the government's Homes for Ukraine website was so popular that it crashed shortly after it went live yesterday as people rushed to register. Sponsors offering a room will be paid £350 a month by the government.
One of those planning to sign up is former Health Secretary Matt Hancock, and he's joined us in the studio. Did you register your interest yesterday on the website?
I did, yesterday evening. And the site, I have to say, was absolutely brilliant. Not only, I mean, it didn't, you know, it was up and live for me, but also written in really plain language, explaining what you needed. I thought it was a really, really good piece of work.
OK, and how do you match with a family?
Well, there's two ways to do it.
Yep.
The first is that if you have a contact with a Ukrainian family, and the second is if you're put in contact through one of the international charities. In my case, I've been working with a British Ukrainian whose family is trying to get out of Ukraine. I've been working with them for a couple of weeks now, and we were talking about, well, what happens when they get here? And I just felt so strongly about it. I said, we will make sure there's accommodation
in your home,
including if that means coming to stay with me. And that was a couple of a week or so ago. And then the government's come forward with this scheme. So whether it's that family or whether it's another family that comes through a different route, if they manage to get accommodation because they have got family here, I'm opening my home. I feel so strongly about it because we've seen these enormous acts of bravery.
No, of course, and everyone feels very strongly about it. But we were speaking to Lisa Nandy a little earlier, who said feeling strongly about it, to paraphrase, is not enough simply because there are a lot of hurdles that we have to get through, and one of them is to get a visa for whoever's coming to stay with you. Have you managed to do that?
Well, I'm working with them to do that, and that has been a challenge. There's a new visa scheme that comes with this new programme that's opening on Friday, so that if a Ukrainian family have a sponsor of somebody who's here, somebody in this case like me, then that means that they can get an accelerated visa. So
an accelerated visa, but still a visa. And I think that the issue is nobody doubts that security checks need to be done on people fleeing war, as they would be done at any border point. And also that DBS checks need to be done on those who are hosting. But there's an issue still with how we are putting the visa obstacle in the way of people who are literally fleeing for their lives. Lisa Nandy pointed out that at the moment there's a 50-page form, including having to upload your mortgage documents. Now, on a normal day, when you're at home with full internet access, that's a headache. For somebody who's trying to get away from being murdered by the Russians, that's just intolerable and inhumane.
Well, I think that's why they're bringing in a new system, so that if you have a sponsor here in the UK who says, basically, I can vouch for you and I can look after you, because I've known this family for several years as constituents, then you can get this accelerated visa. Personally, I think we need a permanent system that's ready to go, so that when there is a crisis somewhere in the world, you know, if the government chooses to say, OK, we're open to helping those refugees in particular, then we can have that permanent scheme. Because, look, I know from my experience in government that getting large schemes like this up and running does take time.
Well, our EU neighbours have just said, you can come in.
So they're in a different situation because they've always had, or recently, for the last few years, had visa-free access. In the UK, we have decided, and I think it's the right decision, actually, that you do need to have those security checks. And that's what the visa is.
The security checks can still be done. The visa is an extra obstacle.
No, but the proposal with this new thing that's visa coming in on Friday is that essentially it is just the security checks and the check that there's somebody like me on the other side who's willing to...
So almost like a visa waiver scheme.
It's essentially a sponsored visa scheme where you take it on... You take the fact that somebody's willing to vouch for you who's here, and you take that
That's your collateral.
As the...
All right. How many people are we talking about in this family if they come out?
Well, it's one family.
Well, how many? How many are in the family?
Well, it'll be around 5.
And you can put 5 people up in your personal home?
Yeah, so in my constituency home, I'll be able to do this. And
would you live there as well? Or?
Well, I live both there and in London. So I'm not there all of the time because as an MP, obviously you both live in the constituency and I have a flat in London. So, yes, and you know, before going down this route, I checked with obviously with the kids, and you know, they're really enthusiastic about it, because I come back to this point, we all want to help. The scenes have been so awful.
Well, that begs the question, should every MP, seeing as every MP has, well, most of them have 2 homes, should every MP offer the home in which they aren't spending the largest proportion of their time to a refugee like you?
You invite me to become extremely unpopular amongst my colleagues.
Well, it's simple. It's yes or no.
The answer is that I think, and I really think, that people who don't want to and people who can't, I don't think we should say that there's anything bad about that or wrong. There's some MPs who have security issues, which means that they definitely can't, and I understand that. And there's lots of people who just don't have the opportunity to do it.
And presumably the constituency home has to be in an accessible area. I mean, I assume yours is it in a town? Is it on a main street? Is it in a residential suburb?
No, it's in a village in Suffolk. So absolutely, there's all sorts of practical questions. You know, and the government's put forward this £350 a month, which will help to cover costs like transport. You know, there's a bus link to so
they could get the bus to the nearest town.
Yeah.
Is there a local shop that they could shop in?
Yes.
OK, what about a local school?
Well, that's only just in walking distance. Okay. So there's all these practical things we have to deal with.
And are there places at the local school? One of the criticisms is that if you give homes to refugees with children, there needs to be a capacity for them to be educated.
So there's pressure on public services that comes with taking refugees. And I think that's a sacrifice that we
No, I'm not. No, of
make.
course. Yeah. But are you suggesting then that schools should create more places in order to take on refugees?
Yes, because I think compared to the total number of pupils, there's about 600,000 pupils in each year in the UK, in England, I think it is. You know, we're talking relatively small numbers that can easily be absorbed. And, you know, the impact of this war on us here in the UK is going to be very significant. The economic impact, anybody who's filled up their car at the pumps in the last 2 weeks knows. I think there's going to be a wider economic impact I'm very worried about. And there will be an impact on public services. Of course, we should be straightforward about these huge problems that we are going to all experience, everybody watching.
Before we leave this, obviously the elephant in the room in this interview is that we all know that there will be cynics watching this and people who will go online and on Twitter and social media, and they'll say that the reason you're doing this is to help rebuild your reputation after you had a fall, you had a bad political fall, and you're sort of in the wilderness, and that's why you're doing this, to basically improve your standing. What would you say to people who say that?
Well, I mean, it's actually completely the other way around. This came from me doing constituency work, which doesn't often get talked about, but all MPs do it, and nearly all of them really enjoy it. And then I was on BBC Radio Suffolk yesterday morning talking about the scheme, and I was asked straight up, well, you know, you're encouraging other people to sign up. Are you going to sign up? And I just answered the question. And then your team phoned and said, should you come on? So, you know, I didn't do this in order to do it in public, but if by me coming on and us having this discussion, I can encourage other people who are in a position to go on the website, sign up. It's really easy. If I can encourage one more person to sign up to this scheme by coming on and talking to you, then it will have been worth it.
All right, Mr. Hancock, good luck with it. Hope it all works out for you.